This is the Nerd Persona Podcast, Episode 5. On this episode of the Nerd Persona Podcast, we're going to be diving deep into a black hole. We're going to find out what exactly it is, where does it come from, and why is it there in the first place. And we're going to answer the question, are you allergic to it, and should you be scared? All of this and more coming up on this episode of the Nerd Persona Podcast. Loop-de-loops and voids, welcome back to the Nerd Persona Podcast, where today we are going to be trying something a little bit new. I'm here in my recording studio right now, and I am going to demonstrate to you over a podcast how to rip open a black hole. So the first thing we have to do is we have to get a large sun, a exploding ball of energy and gases that consistently explode. And what we're going to do is we are going to make it implode on itself. We're going to make it collapse, essentially. So I'm going to demonstrate that here in just a minute. I'm reaching over and I am getting my sun. Oh my gosh, it's so hot. Okay. So I've got this hot sun right here, and it's okay. I've only got third-degree burns right now. I'm down to the bone at this point. Not a big deal. But we're going to rip open a black hole. We're going to rip the universe a new one. Okay, before I burn the rest of my flesh off, let's go on ahead and crunch this guy down. And now do you guys hear that? It's almost like the heartbeat of the universe. Now, what's really cool about this sound effect is this was actually captured by a group known as LIGO. And really what the event that you're hearing is the event of two black holes that kind of swirled in a gravitational pull around themselves until they eventually collided into themselves, and they created this frequency that we could hear through space. It's really quite fascinating to hear how two forms of gravity are just kind of pushing and pulling at each other, which kind of create this frequency like a speaker does. So a speaker works by compressing air and converting that into mechanical motion to create sound energy or a different pressure level. So in the case of a black hole, what it's doing is it's basically taking mass and that's converting it into, it's kind of shaking it violently and turning that into mechanical energy. And so what that corporation did is they took that mechanical energy that was being exerted by the black hole and they recorded the shape that it was creating. And from that shape of how violently it was shaking, they created a sound effect that we can hear today. Unfortunately, for black holes, we actually can't even see them. And the reason you can't see them is because the gravitational pull in them is so strong that it actually pulls light itself into a black hole. If you look at a picture of a black hole, you can sometimes see images where it's actually absorbing another sun, and you can see how the light itself kind of swirls around the black hole until it gets to the center. So think of it like kind of like a tornado. You can't actually see a tornado unless it picks up something like grass or barns or cows and swirls them around in the tornado so you can see the visual shape. Other than that, though, it's just this invisible wind swirling about. The only thing is that unlike a tornado, a black hole is going to last much longer than a tornado, because there's a lot of things on Earth that kind of affect a tornado and kind of disband it. But in space, it's kind of a different story. So according to space.com, a black hole with the mass of our sun would last 10 to the power of 67 years. So that is 68 zeros, people. That's a lot of years. So again, according to space.com, our sun is 4.603 billion years old. And they predict that in about 5 billion years, our sun will essentially run out of hydrogen and collapse on itself and create a black hole. But you may be asking yourself, what are the side effects of a black hole? What's also really interesting is that there is a difference in time dilation, which means that, let me turn off my regulator. And you can see that now, if I get really close to the black hole, my audio starts to slow down a bit. And that's because time close to a black hole is actually a lot slower than it is away from a black hole. And what's really interesting is that your body actually starts to stretch so much that it almost becomes like a thin piece of string, and then I just get sucked up into it. Okay, I'm going to turn my regulator back on because I'm betting that you guys don't want to hear a slowed down voice for the rest of this podcast. So where does all of that mass go? Well, we don't know exactly, but we have plenty of theories as to where that black hole mass goes. Essentially, we can't really send a person or a probe into a black hole, because what would happen is it would get really close, and then it would basically get crushed under the intense gravitational force that is located in the center of that black hole. So we don't really know, unless you want to go in there personally yourself and find out, but we will probably never know. So according to Cole Meller of the University of Maryland, quote, "It is thought that the matter that goes into a black hole will get crushed into a tiny point at the center called a singularity. That's the only place that matter is. So if you were to fall into a black hole, you wouldn't hit the surface as you would a normal star. But once you're in there, you're in there. As far as we know, nothing could survive going into a black hole. But people sometimes wonder about wormholes being portals to other universe." End quote. So let me just clear something up for you guys. Wormholes are not the same thing as a black hole. Okay? The difference between a wormhole and a black hole. A wormhole is, think of it like a tunnel into a different part of space or time. Whereas a black hole is like a garbage disposal of space. I can't think of any other way to explain it. Here's what I will say about black holes, though. I think there is actually a movie that represents what black holes are in terms of physics extremely well. If you are ever curious, I highly recommend you watch Interstellar. It's a very, very slow movie. The ending's kind of interesting, but it does a very good job of explaining physics in the sense of if you travel at a certain speed in space versus somebody who stays on Earth, then, you know, they'll age differently. And it also explains, you know, kind of the effects of a black hole if somebody were to go straight into it outside of the, you know, going outside of time. If you watch the movie, I do recommend it. I think it's a very interesting movie in terms of physics. But I mean, you know, there's all sorts of different representations of black holes in different forms of media. You know, in Star Trek, they touch base on it, you know, again, traveling through time, but that can be a wormhole and not a black hole. But they look similar in how they're represented. I never thought I'd be talking about representation of black holes. You know, we talk about representation of different people of different cultures, but no, we're talking about representation of black holes and wormholes. So yeah, Star Trek touches base on it quite a bit. You can watch the brand new J.J. Abrams. Well, I guess it's not brand new. It came out in 2015, I believe. You know, where Spock travels back in time and changes the whole timeline forever with Nero. Both very good movies. If you want a good movie to watch for fun, I would recommend the Star Trek movie. If you want a movie that fully explains what a black hole is, well, maybe not fully explains it, but it explains it in a realistic, theoretical sense, then I would recommend watching Interstellar, just to kind of pique your curiosity. So, we're going to have to cut the episode short a little bit today. I've unfortunately run out of stuff to talk about. You know, when I was making the episode for this, I wanted to make sure I wasn't trying to bore you. I wasn't trying to bore anybody that was listening to this podcast. I didn't want it to become a physics lecture. I just wanted it to be, you know, hey, here's a couple fun facts about black holes that maybe you didn't know about. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Plans for the future. We are getting pretty close to Christmas time. So I've got a special podcast planned for next time. And yeah, I think I want to kind of get away from, you know, history of stuff or what is this. I think I want to do something a little more fun next time, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So, and I'm still trying to find co-hosts. I haven't been able to find one yet, but we're going to keep trying. We're going to try and get somebody on here to have a conversation, and I think that would be a little more exciting than these previous podcasts. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Before you click away from this podcast, though, if you haven't already, I do have a YouTube channel that I'm going to be posting videos on, probably not regularly, but every once in a while I'm going to be posting videos that contain extra Nerd Persona content that you would not be able to hear on the Nerd Persona podcast. They're just like regular YouTube videos, probably touching base on, you know, different topics that I don't touch base on in the podcast because I think they probably don't fit too well. So definitely check that out. Check out my social media. I am available on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. My Snapchat name doesn't match the other two, but you can follow me on Snapchat at the Snapcaster. That's all lowercase, THEE, Snap, and then Caster, Caster. You can follow me on Twitter at Nerd Persona. And then you can follow me on Instagram at nerd_persona. So yeah, definitely feel free to check me out on my social media accounts, because sometimes I post polls on there for, you know, kind of asking you guys what kind of videos you would like to see or what kind of podcasts you would like to hear. So yeah, I wanted this to be as interactive as possible for everyone. So definitely check those out. And you guys already know where you can listen to this podcast, but you're already listening to it, so there's not really a point for me to put a plug there. All right, so I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to let you guys get back to your day. I hope you have a very lovely day. I hope you learned a couple things about black holes today. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you next time on the Nerd Persona Podcast. What the hell am I supposed to do with this black hole now? I have no freaking idea what I'm supposed to do with this stupid thing. I can't really touch it. I can't touch it at all. I guess I'll just use it as my trash can for now and let it exist for 10 to the 67th years. 68